Hello, everyone. I would like to welcome you officially to the first podcast of the Edelweiss Alliance. I'm Thea, and I'm going to do this podcast all by myself today, so I'm not going to have anyone invited in here. I'm just going to talk on liberal individualism and the identity crisis we are facing right now. These are been topics that are frequently talked about also within academia, and I myself have had a couple of politics topics at university, and I think it would be nice to kind of summarize the entire scenario, maybe more from a theoretical point of view, but also trying to relate it to what we're going through right now, and that meaning the white identity crisis, right, we're facing. So so I would like to begin with saying that humans who have the capacity to pursue projects and be agents by themselves, they also have the capacity to make gross miscalculations about what's in their own interest. And this is something that the left and liberals tend to forget about, that we are mere humans. We make mistakes, it's only human. The thing is that these mistakes may cause us serious and lasting harm. It's a distinctive and quite problematic claim of liberalism that freedom is of such value that we shall not, generally speaking, try to interfere to prevent individuals from making these mistakes. So, as according to liberal individualists, freedom is seen as a special kind of good that should not, in general, be sacrificed for the sake of other kinds of goods. This implies a characteristic view about the priority of liberty. And on this view, liberty can be restricted only for the sake of liberty itself. That's for the irony of it. To this is where we attach the requirement of equal liberty, which says that each person has an equal right to a fully adequate scheme of equal basic liberties, which is compatible to a similar scheme of liberties for all. So on this view, to think of liberty as a good that can be traded off between persons in this way to make a fundamental mistake about the kind of good that freedom is. Liberty and freedom are not to be thought of as goods like money or commodities, right? Whose value we can redistribute and optimize continuously. So rather, liberty needs to be understood as deeply entwined with individuals' privileged moral status and with the result, with a resulting entitlement to equal consideration and respect. In this particular view, so the notion of liberty is tightly connected with a claim about the special dignity and worth of individuals, and any public ethic that takes individuals' moral status and equal entitlement to concern and respect seriously must ensure that each person obtains whatever liberties are necessary for them fully to develop the one and only life which they will ever have. So we can agree that these are absurd complications, and liberals themselves have differed about how to interpret the requirement of equal liberty. Two obvious and striking trends within the liberal tradition over the past quarter century have been, first, the widespread disillusionment with the welfare state and the associated success of, let's say, political movements dedicated to its dismantlement. And the second, is the growth of a body that let's say a body of theoretical work that is trying to revive the classical liberal and libertarian ideas. And critics concede that the internal logic of liberalism indeed displays an individualistic bias. So to them, it is unsurprising that the post-war liberal flirtation with social democracy and welfare state socialism proved to be unstable in the long run. So this kind of critic says that the recent revival of classical liberalism in practice and in theory at least has the merit of clarifying for us the underlying individualistic agenda of liberalism. It also sort of reveals once and for all that the liberal tradition proclaims the separation of the self from its collective context and legitimates an alienated society of self-absorbed strangers. So it perpetrates a social and political order corrosive of essential and long-lost ideas of community and human association. If we are to escape the clutches of such a pernicious modernity, we must reject the individualism and the package of liberal values aligned to it, and turn instead to our social and collective identities, right? And we could say that the fundamental defect of liberal individualism is that it assumes that the self is made prior to the social interaction. So clearly, any viable alternative must claim that the self is made in the context of social interaction. And here, to quote Daniel Bell, he says, "We ordinarily think of ourselves." And to quote Michael Sandel, he says that as bearers of this family or community or nation or people, as bearers of this history, as sons or daughters of this or that revolution, as citizens of this republic, social attachments that more often than not are involuntarily picked up during the course of our upbringing, right? Rational choice haven't played no choice whatsoever. I did not choose to love my mother and father, to care about the neighborhood which I live or I grew up in, to have special feelings for the people of my country. And it is difficult to understand why anyone would think that I have chosen those attachments or that I ought to have done so. That is a quotation of Michael Sandel. So communitarians like Bell and Sandel suggest that the good life consists in making peace or war with our inescapable social identity. The problem with liberalism is that by emphasizing the importance of choice, it also condemns citizens to a perpetual restlessness about their social identity, and so undermines the stability of genuine community on which authentic self-discovery depends on. So identity has become a weak piece of the puzzle that has been taken away from us with the grip of liberalism, and it has made us immune to what the normal sentiments should feel like. And now to go a little bit within identity, we can say that the rise of concerns of the future of a white ethnicity are religious fundamentalism, anti-abortionism, anti-desegregationism, and other conservative ideologies and movements associated with the new right in the United States are manifestations of the same basic trend towards the politicization of identity. So organized identity politics did not acquire definite shape until the breakdown of the leftist community towards the end of the 60s, for instance in the States, which was a transition marked by a repudiation of the notions of individuality central to this community in favor of more fixed identifications with the collective heritages of race, ethnicity, and gender. So current iterations of multiculturalism and identity politics can be actually traced to Marxism and the Cold War, particularly the Marxist ideological tenets of the Institute of Social Research at Goethe University in Frankfurt, Germany, also known as the Frankfurt School, predominantly Jewish. Moreover, there has been a categorical attempt to justify the silencing of any oppositions to the Frankfurt School academics and their resentment-based ideology. In his 1965 essay, also called Repressive Tolerance, and dedicated to Brandeis University students, Marcuse, a Jewish philosopher and political thinker and father of the new left of Germany after the 60s, proffered the following. The function and value of tolerance depend on the equality prevalent in the society in which tolerance is practiced. As he put it, what is proclaimed and practiced as tolerance today is in many of its most effective manifestations serving the cause of oppression. The outcome of Marcus's ideology was tolerance for movements from the left, but intolerance for the movements from the right, which we can also call liberating tolerance. So, because of the right was always seen by the left as protecting its nefarious self-interests and attacking the status quo, and whether it has beneficial aspects or not is justified, called for, in fact. So, if we think about how these thoughts of the Frankfurt School's work has had a deep impact, for instance, on American culture, it also gives us an insight on why the America of the 1950s turns into today's divided, animosity-filled nation, right? And in turn, this has contributed also to the undeniable breakdown of the family unit, as well as identity politics, radical feminism, and racial polarization. With the question of identity, what for? And here's also where I would like to quote Kalergi. I'm not sure if you are familiar with Kalergi, but I'm highly encouraging you to just do a quick Google search and just type in Kalergi Plan, and you will be able to find out what it's actually behind the EU's curtains and the international elites' plans regarding multiculturalism in the West. But to quote Kalergi, he says clearly that the man of the future will be of mixed race. The races and classes of today will gradually disappear due to the elimination of space, time, and prejudice. So the man of the future is actually set to not be white anymore. Here in the West we're talking. We are not set to feel strong about who we are, but rather to let that sit, while others, cultures, are welcomed to fill that space for us, with their own identity and beliefs. So the society of today encourages us to also let go of the traditional and welcome the modern, the open, the no borders, where liberalism has allowed this, and liberalism has allowed complete chaos without any order whatsoever. So how can one feel a strong sense of identity if our children are, learning multicultural idealism in school? Where is the sense of identity when a country is being ripped their own right to feel any sort of love for their existence, while identity politics is seen as a strength as long as it's not white? The left is actually currently debating on how to make a comeback to what they call real politics. That means seizing power, in their own words, also freeing victims of their oppressions. And obviously they're planning on how to dissolve identitarianism. Liberal democracy is willing to promise that somehow self-absorbed individuals will somehow work together towards a common end. What they did not realize is that when this has worked in the past, let's say for 2 centuries, liberal democracies were also bound together by pre-existing natural solidarities, such as like ethnic traditions, a common religion, shared language, and quite consequently, a dominant race. And that was the formula that so far has worked back when both United States and Europe were not the melting pot as of right now, with people of different races and cultures forced to live together within the same border. The truth is that we can agree that liberalism oppresses, if anything, right? You are being abandoned, let on your own to find yourself a place, rights, freedom, and fulfillment against the dominant community. We're looking for ways to lead us again towards a mystical solution of all problems, where everyone is happy and fulfilled in the society they live in. But we've seen how that went for our parents, for our grandparents. Perhaps it's more useful to actually consider or reconsider what it means to be human as part of a collective that genuinely values diversity. And this is not a question of politics, but of metaphysics. And diversity will never be forced, but allowed to happen within its natural borders, right? So we can say that there are two key factors for the human living in the West right now. On one side, we have, being humanly sensitive for the sake of truly understanding what lays behind a forced, diverse society. And on the other hand, we have the fear that each of us has been provoked by trying to trust each other and naturally trying to debate the future together when we're just so different. And it cannot work, especially when solidarity is expected only from one single group. And that group right now, it's facing extinction threats, the white group. So it seems like for libertarians, identity politics only work one way, and that is to protect and victimize continuously, let's say, women, minorities, immigrants, and also the invented gender fluid individuals, and same with other religious minorities, while white identity is constantly being called for extinction. It's constantly being attacked. You can see it in the news, for instance, and especially coming from personalities and philosophers such as Mark Lilla, who has been obsessed over making everyone believe that identity politics should just be dropped, for instance, in the spectrum of United States, and also since the rise of Trump especially. So they were indeed scared, ultimately, because of the potential that unity and enlightenment can bring to the table, not only for the Western man to start questioning their politicians and government, but also building that awareness regarding the lies that we've been fed for centuries now. And we're living in a myth. We are living in the myth of liberalism. And that was all. And I really hope you've enjoyed it. Maybe next time we'll have some guests. I'm not really sure, but if not, I will just try to look for another topic for you and maybe record a little bit more on the same lines. Or if you have any suggestions, just please drop us a message or comment in our Instagram and I'll go through it. I really hope that you've enjoyed the topic. I know it's a little bit too theoretical sometimes, but I think it's good to lay some grounds, and try to understand where does this old madness come from. So thank you for listening once again, and see you around. Stay healthy and safe. Goodbye.